Roberta, can you give me an idea of what Earth systems governance means to you in a practical sense?
In a practical sense, it means to translate what we are experiencing on a global scale, which is climate change. But climate change, you cannot touch it, you cannot feel it, but you feel the consequences of climate change. You see more diseases, you see transfer of production, of agricultural production. For instance, the French are very concerned because the Pinot Noir grapes are moving, and they are moving and leaving the French territory. So Earth systems governance should answer this type of concerns. What does it mean, climate change, to my life? Does it mean that I will be more exposed to diseases? Does it mean that I will be more exposed to storms? Does it mean that if I live in the Netherlands, I should be more concerned not only with sea level rise, but also with the more storm surges? This calls for a different type of governance, because before we had this kind of threat, you could talk these things in the UN, in the Security Council, international organizations. Now it's a consumer type of concern, it's a citizen type of concern. So, and that's the new challenge, that you have a global process that requires individual change. This is a different type of governance.
Okay, that's lovely. And you used an example of the Titanic before. Can you?
In a way, it is like the Titanic, because there is a very famous actor, Diamond, who wrote a beautiful book, won several awards, called Collapse. And the subtitle is very suggestive: how societies choose to fail or succeed. And he encounters, with all this research that he did on the Mayas, the Easter Island, all the civilizations that have disappeared, a common thread. First, they fail to anticipate the change, or they anticipate, but they fail to perceive the threat, the seriousness of the change. Or they anticipated, they perceived, but they failed to communicate to society. Or when they were able to do those things, they failed to act. And in a way, I feel that we are in a sort of Titanic. Why? Because the people that were in the Titanic, they perceived, they knew, they anticipated, they knew that their route had many icebergs. We already perceived climate change. We know that it's coming. So we haven't failed to anticipate, as the people from the Titanic did not fail to anticipate that there were icebergs. They did not fail to perceive that if they hit an iceberg of that size, they would have problems. Well, we haven't failed to perceive also the anticipated change, which will be dramatic. Thirdly, they have not failed to communicate to everybody in the boat that problem was looming in the future. We have not failed to communicate to society, because a couple of years ago or 10 years ago, this was a scientific discussion. Now it's not any longer a scientific discussion. We had already 3 Security Council of the UN discussing specifically climate change. All the 4 past meetings of the G8 have been dedicated to climate change. So we cannot say that we have not failed to anticipate, perceive, and communicate. The question now is, are we willing to act? Which is exactly the same thing that happened with the Titanic. They failed to act. Why? Because they were discussing traditional governance. Oh, the architecture of the shipbuilding industry is fantastic. The Titanic has the best technology. It's supposed to be the first unsinkable boat. And they sunk. I think we are actually in the same predicament. We know it's serious. We know it can be disastrous. But unfortunately, we are looking at the future with the rear mirror. We are looking at the future believing that we can, it's a question of substituting oil for ethanol. If we have biofuels, everything is fine, because then we are not producing greenhouse emissions. Wrong. We have to do away with cars. So that's the practical thing. For the first time, we are facing a threat that forces us to make individual changes in my consumption.
Thanks very much, that's great.